I spend considerable time on this podcast pointing out people that I have determined to be massive assholes. Right? It's usually people like Cuticle Boy and his scooter, or maybe some other jerk off on the bus. There are a lot of shitheads riding public transportation. Me among them, of course. But at least I'm kind of a quiet shithead when I'm riding the bus. Uh, I'll bitch about it. Douchebags at the gym who don't re-rack their weights. Hate those motherfuckers. But I talk about it a lot, and I realize that it can get a little repetitive. And it might lead you to believe, and I think it's distinctly possible, that I live inside of some sort of asshole supercluster. Which, picture that visual. Asshole supercluster, I feel like, would be a great album name for an indie rock band. I'm actually kind of picturing the album cover for Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, except instead of the moon, there's just it's something else. It's like a spaceship cruising through the heavens, and it's getting spackled with poop fragments by free floating buttholes amongst the stars. Although they do say that life on Earth began with showers of space dust. So maybe it's true that many billions of years ago, there were in fact we could check with Neil deGrasse Tyson about this. I'm sure he would know. Big floating anuses out in space who blasted storms of fecal spray out into the atmosphere, and some of it fell to Earth, and it combined with the other elements to create the earliest microorganisms that would one day, through the accident of evolution, become the raging assholes of the 21st century. I think if you've studied your physics and the history of Earth and evolution, you think there might be some credence to that theory. And it's certainly something for the scientists, I think, to take a look at, because there does appear to be an asshole supercluster in the New York City area, and I believe there is also a huge asshole supercluster in and around the city of San Francisco, particularly when it concerns the Department of Education out there. This is from the foxnews.com. One second. A San Francisco high school teacher is taking heat for saying that Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, displayed white privilege when he attended President Biden's inauguration in a casual coat and mittens and captured the attention of the internet. This is what she says. Senator Sanders is no white supremacist insurrectionist, but he manifests privilege, white privilege, male privilege, and class privilege in ways that my students could see and feel. Ingrid Sayer-Oki, a former UC Berkeley professor, wrote in an op-ed for the San Francisco Chronicle. And of course, it has been long understood among the level-headed that a hyphenated last name, like Ms. Sayer-Oki's here, is a sure sign that you are dealing with a complete asshole. The article continues. Social media users found a photo of Sanders, 79, looking cold and grumpy at the inauguration. So funny they circulated it for days, making jokes and memes. Sayer-Oki wrote that she puzzled and fumed over this. You puzzled and fumed? It's a fucking internet meme. And by the way, like, the biggest meme of the year was the black guy with the huge penis. So, if we're talking about meme culture, I mean, where are you finding more diversity than, and he was gay. I think he was a gay porn star or something. He did some gay modeling or something like that. Wood on a Bed, I believe, is the name of the meme. Gay black man, meme of the year. Meme culture is diverse. Anyway, moving on. We talked about gender and the possible meanings of the attire chosen by Vice President Kamala Harris, Dr. Jill Biden, and the Biden grandchildren, Michelle Obama, Amanda Gorman, and others. We referenced the female warriors teachers inspiring these women, the colors of their educational degrees, and their monochromatic ensembles of pure power, Sayer Oki wrote, referring to her students. By the way, I'm looking at a picture of this broad, and she has wacko written all over her faces. Ingrid Sayer, Professor Ingrid Sayer Oki, if you'd like to look her up. But she looks like a fucking whack job. Like if you saw her on like Bumble or Tinder or some shit, you'd be like, she'll either fuck your dick off or cut your dick off. One of the two, not both. I'm getting the impression that she's not a big fan of the male erection. If she has a boyfriend, she refers to him as her partner, and she has fucked him in the ass with a strap on, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Probably one that greatly resembles the penis of the meme guy sitting on the bed that was so popular for the first 9 months or so of lockdown. Anyway, she continues, and there, across all of our news and social media feeds, was Bernie memes, Bernie sweatshirts, endless love for Bernie. I puzzled and fumed as an individual as I strove to be my best possible teacher, she continued. I don't know many poor or working class or female or struggling to be taken seriously folk who would show up at the inauguration of our 46th president dressed like Bernie, unless those same folk had privilege, which they don't. First of all, Bernie showed up dressed like Bernie, right? The other people that you mentioned, Michelle Obama, Dr. Jill, Kamala Harris, they're all part of the reptilian political class that transcends gender. Their fucking gender is literally just a bodysuit that they wear that covers up the power-sucking reptilians inside that just exist to control and exploit the American people, right? They're not, don't look at fucking, when people are like, oh, fucking Kamala, the first female vice president, made me so happy as a woman of color to see this. She doesn't fucking represent you, all right? They all represent fucking rich jerk-offs who are just profiteering off of the American people. Bernie, on the other hand, is a character who is known for showing up everywhere looking incredibly disheveled. All right, that's what you get when you invite Bernie Sanders to your event. It's like expecting Seth Rogen to show up somewhere not smelling like weed. Okay, it's just not going to happen. All right, it's not Bernie's fault that he dressed warm and the rest of those idiots decided to play along with the little dog and pony show and they dressed inappropriately for the weather. All right, that's on them. They benefit from this whole fucking, like I said, reptilian DC world controlling cabal. And that's what they do. That's the trade-off is they have to dress like idiots, but they get to control the universe. If they want to fucking blow up the moon with nuclear weapons, they get to, but they got to be a little chilly on Inauguration Day. You know, you would think they would just move it to fucking April. It's like 70 in DC by early April. Anyway, I want some fucking common sense leadership in DC. And while I might not agree, I'm a libertarian. Bernie's a fucking socialist. I might not agree with his politics most of the time. At least I can find common ground with the gentleman on the issue of wearing a parka and big mittens. I'm really having trouble getting the word big mittens out of my mouth. A big cock coming out of my mouth. You can't say big cock coming out of his mouth. But the mittens, by the way, were knitted by a cis female small town school teacher. So, I feel like that's, supposed to be right up their fucking alley, right? She's a small town school teacher, the heroes of America. The Democrats love that shit. She's a woman. You know, she's doing her fucking job. She's knitting. I bet she did some laundry and the dishes after that. Maybe made me some fucking cupcakes. But the point is, when the mercury drops, you should be wearing fucking mittens and a parka. It just makes sense. And if you're too stupid to do that, I'm sorry. Okay? We spend all this fucking time lauding Kamala Harris and all these people over this shit, but maybe if they were so fucking smart, they would have dressed for the occasion. Anyway, this idiot, this professor, rightfully took a beating on Twitter over her stupid commentary. And again, as a reminder, she lives in San Francisco, and I was there in January a few years back. And if you've ever been to San Fran or the Bay Area in January, you know that it's 70 degrees. There's a cool breeze. You can get away with wearing like a hoodie for most of the morning, and then it'll actually by the afternoon it'll be too warm for a hoodie in January. So this lady has no fucking ground to stand on when it comes to assessing cold weather attire. Bernie, on the other hand, is from Vermont. Vermont is right next to Canada, one of the coldest places on the planet. All right? Whose judgment should we trust when it comes to dressing for the cold weather? The agenda-touting radical feminist from the comfortable, temperate San Francisco Bay Area? Or the senior citizen who will die if he catches pneumonia? And he will die this year a doubly painful death if that pneumonia combines with coronavirus, which he could catch because it's going around right now. And he was at a public event, which, you know, if you listen to them, you know, even if they're outside and socially distanced, you can still get it. So who the fuck knows? So yeah, I really don't know how this woman is allowed to educate the leaders of tomorrow. It's really ridiculous. When we say academia is a fucked up place, that's what we're talking about. Here we are. Yes, this is my next story. This all is going down in San Francisco, where the school board voted to rename schools which were named after George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and I love this one, Dianne Feinstein, of all people. Who else? FDR is on the list. I like that. They created their list. They got a wheelchair guy. They created a list of names in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Just because FDR was in a wheelchair while pulling the country out of the Depression doesn't mean that he couldn't also be a hate-mongering piece of shit. He wasn't a handicapped racist. He was a handy-capable racist. Who else? Abraham Lincoln, definitely one of my favorites on the list. Most of you, of course, remember Abraham Lincoln as the president who exposed himself to an eventual assassination in order to hold the Union together and free Black Americans from slavery. Apparently, though, in San Francisco, he's known as the guy who took a little bit of land away from the native population while building the Transcontinental Railroad. A railroad which I'm quite certain played at least a small role in bringing the city of San Francisco into prominence as an American city. Who else? Who's the next hate monger on the list? Oh, we have Lafayette Middle School, named for the Marquis de Lafayette, who purchased a plantation specifically for the purpose of freeing and educating the slaves who were enslaved there so they could make their way into American society, which sounds great. He planned to use his purchase of the plantation and the educating and the freeing of the slaves. He wanted to use that as a model for how the United States could end slavery. Can't name a school after that guy, because that's a terrible person to honor and emulate. George Washington, first president, the man who led the army that ended British colonial rule in the United States. He is referred to as a colonizer. That'll put your brain in a fucking pretzel, right? The guy who made it so that we were no longer colonies is a colonizer. That's a fucking Chinese riddle. Am I allowed to say that anymore? Am I canceled? Oh, well. I was never going to get a job on Saturday Night Live anyway. Next on the list, Presidio Middle School had to change its name because Presidio means fortified military settlement. And of course, we can't have that. Argonne Elementary School has to change its name because it's named, of course, for a famous World War I battle. That was a battle fought by segregated units. I love it. What a brilliant line of reasoning. You have to erase the accomplishments of black soldiers who fought in this battle because there was segregation at the time. Ergo, any reference to the time and place where said segregation occurred is inherently racist, which I guess means that we also have to cancel Jackie Robinson Day, because Jackie Robinson, of course, broke the color barrier, and the color barrier was, of course, racist, right? We can't have Jackie Robinson Day without mentioning the very racist color barrier. So to avoid mentioning the color barrier, Jackie Robinson Day is now canceled. There's a bunch more on the list. You can look it all up. If you San Francisco School Board, I'll try to share some of this shit. But they kind of have local relevance to San Fran. Like Dianne Feinstein was there was a Confederate flag in a display, and someone destroyed it. This is in like the 1980s, by the way, but it was a historical display. So she was mayor, and she had them put the flag back so they could not have a vandalized fucking display up. I guess I don't fucking know. But again, this is what goes on the West Coast. Yeah, God bless them for certain things out there. Some of their more progressive policies on like weed and drugs and psychedelics and stuff is great, and we got all of that, and we've gotten some great arts and entertainment out of it. But there is a degree of lunacy out on the West Coast that is just, it's a different lunacy than a New York lunacy. Like New York, New York is like I've talked about the Port Authority or the subway. New York is, I'm going to do PCP and cut you with a fucking razor blade. Like, that's how New York is crazy, right? New York is two guys licking each other's assholes on a subway platform during a viral pandemic. That's New York crazy. West Coast crazy is this, it's like a soft crazy where they hide it under this veil of good intentions, but if you listen to it, you're like, oh, that's fucking nuts. This, for example. The director of the school district's arts department told ABC 7 News that a decision has been made to change the name of their department, VAPA, which is short for Visual and Performing Arts. The new name will be SFUSD Arts Department. I guess that's San Francisco Unified School District Arts Department. And we are prioritizing anti-racist arts instruction in our work, the director, Sam Bass, told the network. I think that means you can only draw with black, brown, and yellow crayons. You can't. The white ones, they get melted down and thrown out. No, joking. We're just having some fun here. Jokes. But Sam Bass continues. The use of so many acronyms within the educational field often tends to alienate those who may not speak English to understand the acronym. It was not clear whether SFUSD was also considered a racist acronym, which is fucking hilarious. They replaced one acronym with another acronym. In a memo, the department cited a 1999 paper titled White Supremacy Culture, which details a list of characteristics of that culture. Remember what I said before? They just base shit on some fucking lunacy that some idiot wrote in like a grad school paper. The writer, Tema Okun, claims the characteristics are damaging because they are used as norms and standards without being proactively named or chosen by the group and promote white supremacy thinking. Yes, that's right. If you are listening to this, that's what you learned from today's podcast. Acronyms are now the latest tool of the white supremacy. Acronyms. I guess black people do not go scuba diving. And I'm not going to make a joke about black people swimming because someone might interpret that as racist. Not. It's just, we goof around here. We're very silly, okay? If you're dumb enough to take any of this fucking shit seriously, then you shouldn't be watching. But I have to ask, doesn't that make the following hip-hop terms incredibly racist as well? Cream, cash rules everything around me. Ham, hard as a motherfucker. And who could forget FUBU, for us, by us. Well, I'm not part of the us, but yeah. So are those out? Can Wu-Tang no longer play Cream if they go on tour? Does that put BLM on the same level as KKK? Like, I don't know how they're justifying this. And I don't want to go off on a whole thing about, fucking PC culture, this, that, the other fucking thing, because I think, first of all, it's been beaten to death. I've done it on this podcast. Every fucking white bro with a fucking beard is doing that on his fucking podcast. You can go, Tucker Carlson does a great job. If you want it, go watch him. I will, I'll send you over there. And I also feel like the stupidity here is in plain sight. And it is what it always is. It's adults who live in a fantasy world doing absurd things to placate their own egos. And it has nothing to do with people of color or any of that shit. It has nothing to do with that. They're not trying to help anyone. They're not trying to lift anyone up. That's a bullshit fucking screen. It's just assholes trying to out-asshole one another. So you get one who's like, oh, yeah, Bernie Sanders didn't want to be cold at inauguration. White oppression. And then you get the next guy, hears that, and they're like, oh, you think the old guy wearing mittens is a sign of white male oppression? Well, guess what? I just announced that the guy who freed the slaves is a total piece of shit. All right? You come into the offices of the San Francisco Board of Education. You better come correct, motherfucker.